Think about the last time you were sitting on your couch, just casually scrolling through your news feed.
Right? We all do it.
Yeah, you're minding your own business, maybe half watching television, and suddenly you feel this inexplicable rising tide of anger.
Like a physical reaction.
Exactly. Your heart rate actually ticks up. Your jaw clenches, and you haven't even clicked the article yet.
You just read the headline.
Right. You just saw the image and your body is reacting. Or let's look at a totally different scenario. You, the person listening right now, you're booking a hotel for a trip or maybe looking at shoes online.
The classic online shopping experience.
Yeah. You're taking your time, weighing your options, and then you see that little red text flashing on the screen. Only 2 rooms left at this price.
15 other people are looking at this right now.
Yes. And suddenly that calm deliberation just evaporates. You feel this urgent, almost physical pressure in your chest.
A tightness.
A tightness, yeah. You scramble to find your credit card and click buy immediately before the invisible competition beats you to it.
It is a very specific, deeply modern kind of anxiety. And I think the most insidious part is that it feels entirely organic in the moment.
It really does.
Right. When your heart rate spikes over that political headline, or when you feel that rush of panic to buy the hotel room, it feels like your own genuine emotional response to the world. It feels like autonomy.
It feels like it's you, like it's your personality reacting to information. But what if those feelings, that sudden flash of political rage or that desperate consumer panic, aren't accidental at all?
They rarely are.
What if they are the exact intended symptoms of a highly engineered, deeply invisible architecture of manipulation? Today, we are opening a massive investigative dossier.
And it is massive.
It really is. Our mission for this deep dive is to decode the actual mechanical ways that mass manipulation and psychological techniques are deployed against you.
We are setting aside the abstract theories here.
Yeah.
No dystopian science fiction today.
No, we are looking at reality. Indisputable, documented examples of how these architectures operate, specifically focusing on the digital battlegrounds across Europe and right here in France.
And the material we've compiled for this investigation is vast. It's sobering, really.
Yeah.
We are pulling directly from government intelligence.
Declassified style stuff.
Exactly. We have recent reports from Viginum, which is France's official state agency tasked with detecting foreign digital interference.
Right.
We're also pulling from internal European Parliament briefings on computational propaganda, NATO strategic communications toolkits, cutting-edge behavioral research on cognitive warfare.
And the foundational psychological studies on emotional contagion that basically built the modern internet.
Precisely. And I want to clarify right up front, the objective today is not to weigh in on specific political issues or, tell you which side of a debate is correct.
Right. We're entirely impartial here.
The objective is to pull back the curtain on the machinery itself. We want to show you the precise mechanisms by which state actors, algorithms, and sophisticated communication campaigns attempt to bypass your critical thinking.
To basically think for you.
Yes, because in this digital age, the human mind itself is the ultimate battlefield.
And that requires a fundamental shift in how we view our digital lives. Your smartphone is not just a tool you use to access the world anymore.
No, it's a two-way mirror.
Exactly. But before we investigate the high-tech digital interference of today, the AI bots flooding French social media, the deep fakes targeting European elections, we have to start by understanding the foundational vulnerabilities of the human brain.
Because if the human brain didn't have inherent biological and psychological blind spots, none of this multi-billion-dollar technology would actually work.
The technology relies on our flaws.
It does. The technology deployed by modern intelligence agencies and tech giants is new, but the psychological blueprints they rely on are nearly a century old.
Right. To truly grasp the modern manipulation landscape across Europe, we have to travel back to, 1928?
1928, yes, to an American pioneer named Edward Bernays.
The father of public relations?
That's what he's widely called, though a more accurate title might be the architect of modern propaganda. He actually wrote a seminal book simply titled Propaganda.
He didn't really mince words, did he?
Not at all. In it, he didn't apologize for manipulation, he championed it. He laid out a concept that he called the invisible government.
See, the phrase invisible government instantly triggers alarm bells for me. It sounds like a late-night internet conspiracy theory about shadowy figures in smoke-filled rooms.
It really does.
But he wasn't writing a warning, was he? He was writing an instruction manual.
He was. He viewed the invisible government as a practical, sociological necessity. You have to put yourself in the mindset of the 1920s elite.
Okay, so mass media is rising.
Populations are booming. And there was this genuine fear of the mob, the idea that everyday people were irrational and driven by base instincts. Bourdais' core thesis was that mass manipulation is actually a moral imperative for a modern, complex society to function.
Wait, a moral imperative to manipulate people?
Yes. He argued that if you leave the masses to their own devices to just vote and buy and act on their unguided whims, you get chaos.
Wow.
Therefore, society relies on a small, intelligent group who intimately understands the mental processes and social patterns of the masses.
To keep everyone in line.
Exactly. This elite group, according to Bernays, rules public opinion by manufacturing consent. He wrote, quite literally, that we are governed, our minds are molded, and our tastes are formed largely by men we have never heard of.
I mean, it is a staggeringly arrogant view of humanity. The idea that we are all just cattle needing to be herded by our intellectual superiors.
It's highly paternalistic.
But it's also incredibly prescient, because he understood that if you know how the mind works, you can steer the entire ship without the passengers ever knowing there's a hand on the wheel.
You don't need force.
Right. You don't need force. You just need psychology. And reading through these sources, it seems like the most powerful psychological tool for steering that ship, the absolute holy grail of manipulation, is this concept called cognitive dissonance.
Cognitive dissonance is the bedrock upon which modern behavioral manipulation is built.
So what exactly is it?
The theory was first articulated by the psychologist Leon Festinger in the 1950s. At its core, cognitive dissonance is the profound, almost physical mental discomfort a person experiences when they hold two conflicting beliefs simultaneously.
Or when their beliefs directly contradict their actions.
Exactly. Human beings are biologically wired to seek internal consistency. We simply cannot tolerate the internal tension of hypocrisy.
It literally hurts our brains.
It does. When that tension arises, we are driven to resolve it by any means necessary.
I'm trying to visualize this. It's like mental autocorrect.
That's a good way to put it.
Like when you are typing on your phone and you make a typo, the software doesn't like the error, so it aggressively overwrites the word to make the sentence make sense, even if it changes the meaning of what you actually wanted to say.
It forces consistency.
Right. So if a manipulator can deliberately create that error state, that agonizing psychological tension, our brains will frantically rewrite our own core beliefs just to make the tension stop.
The human brain simply cannot tolerate the error message.
Yeah.
Festinger actually proved this mechanism in a classic, slightly devious 1959 study on what he called induced compliance.
Oh, this is the peg-turning one, right?
Yes. And it is essential to understand how this experiment worked, to understand how your social media feed works today.
Break it down for us.
So Festinger and his colleague, James Carlsmith, brought university students into a laboratory, one by one, and they instructed them to perform an intentionally agonizing, mind-numbing task for a full hour.
What was the task?
The participants had to stand at a board and turn square wooden pegs a quarter turn, one after another, over and over again.
An hour of turning wooden pegs? I mean, that sounds like absolute torture. You would be staring at the clock the entire time.
It was explicitly designed to be devoid of any joy or interest. After the hour was up, the researcher would casually tell the participant that they were studying the effects of preconceived notions on task performance.
A little lie.
Right. They would then ask the participant for a seemingly small favor. The researcher would say, "The next subject is waiting out in the hall, but my usual assistant who gives them the background information didn't show up. Could you do me a favor?
Uh-oh.
Could you go out there and tell the next person that the peg-turning task you just did was actually incredibly fun, exciting, and highly enjoyable?"
Wait, so the researcher, an authority figure in a white coat, is directly asking this exhausted college student to lie to a stranger's face.
Exactly. They're asking for a behavioral commitment that directly contradicts the participant's internal reality.
Because the task was incredibly boring.
But they are being asked to act as if it were fun. Now, to incentivize this, the researchers offered the participants money to tell the lie, but they split them into two distinct groups.
Okay.
Half the participants were offered $20 to tell the lie. The other half were offered only one single dollar.
And we have to remember, $20 in 1959 was a significant amount of money for a college student.
Oh, absolutely.
That's like offering someone over $150 today just to tell a quick fib. Most people would do that.
The financial incentive is the absolute crux of the experiment. So after the participants went out to the waiting room, and lied to the next person who was secretly in on the experiment. By the way, the researchers pulled the original participants into a private room.
The debriefing.
Right. And they asked them off the record, how much did you actually enjoy the peg-turning task?
Hmm.
The results revealed the absolute architecture of belief alteration.
What happened?
The people who were paid $20 admitted the truth. They said the task was incredibly boring. They knew they lied, but they had a solid, rational, external justification for lying.
The bunny was good.
Exactly. Because their action was justified by the reward, they experienced no cognitive dissonance. Their internal belief about the boring task remained entirely intact.
Okay, but the people who were paid only $1? I mean, if you pay me a single dollar to lie to someone, that doesn't feel like a fair trade.
It's insufficient.
Yeah, I'm just cheapening my own integrity. My brain is going to start screaming, I'm an honest, smart person, but I just lied to a complete stranger for almost no reward.
That creates the error message.
That creates massive cognitive dissonance.
The tension becomes unbearable for them. The participant is faced with a psychological crisis. They cannot change the past. They already told the lie.
Right.
They cannot change the reward. They only got $1, which is insufficient external justification. The only variable the brain has the power to change is the internal belief itself. So, to resolve the agonizing tension of being a person who lies for no reason, the $1 participants' brains initiated that mental autocorrect. They convinced themselves that they weren't actually lying.
Wait, really?
Yes. When interviewed privately, the $1 group reported to the researchers that the peg-turning task was genuinely interesting and scientifically engaging.
They actually believed it.
They fundamentally altered their perception of reality to justify their actions and relieve the psychological tension.
I want to make sure I'm fully grasping the magnitude of this. The researcher didn't sit down and try to logically persuade the subject that turning pegs was fun.
Not at all.
They didn't show them a PowerPoint presentation on the joys of wooden squares. They just engineered a situation where the subject took a tiny contradictory action and the subject's own brain did the heavy lifting of rewriting their belief system.
It's terrifying, isn't it?
It is. It implies that persuasion isn't about changing minds. It's about forcing a behavior and letting the mind change itself to catch up.
And that psychological vulnerability leads directly to a mass manipulation tactic known as the foot-in-the-door technique.
Right, which we see everywhere today.
Modern manipulators, whether they are political operatives or corporate marketers, they know they cannot ask you to completely change your worldview on day one.
That's too much friction.
Exactly. If a radical political group asks you to adopt an extremist ideology out of the blue, your cognitive defenses will instantly reject it. It is too big of a leap. So they don't ask for a leap. They ask for a tiny, seemingly harmless behavioral commitment first.
And the foundational proof for this comes from a 1966 study, right? By Friedman and Fraser. I was reading this part of the dossier, and it feels like the literal blueprint for every internet scam and political radicalization funnel operating today.
The Friedman and Fraser study perfectly illustrates how identity can be weaponized through small requests. The researchers went door to door in a residential neighborhood, posing as a volunteer safe driving committee.
Okay, seems normal enough.
But they approached homeowners and made an enormous, highly intrusive request. They asked if they could install a massive, incredibly ugly billboard that read, "Drive carefully," directly on the homeowner's front lawn.
Oh, wow. Naturally, the vast majority of people refused, right?
However, 80% refused. It was an absurd request.
Nobody wants a giant, ugly sign ruining their landscaping.
But in a different, demographically identical neighborhood, the researchers used the foot-in-the-door technique. They approached homeowners and started much smaller.
The tiny request?
Right. They asked if the homeowner would be willing to place a tiny 3-inch square sticker promoting safe driving in the corner of their front window.
That's nothing.
It was harmless, practically invisible, and supported a good cause. Almost everyone agreed to this tiny concession.
Yeah, you put the sticker up, it takes 3 seconds, you feel a little bit of civic pride, and then you completely forget about it.
Exactly. But 2 weeks later, the researchers returned to those same houses with the tiny window stickers. This time, they asked the homeowners to put up the massive, ugly, "Drive carefully" billboard on their lawn.
And what happened?
The compliance rate skyrocketed. Over 75% of the people who had agreed to the tiny sticker were now perfectly willing to let strangers install a giant billboard in their yard.
because the tiny sticker changed who they were. It goes right back to the cognitive dissonance we were just talking about.
Precisely.
Once you agree to put that little sticker in your window, your brain slightly rewrites your self-image. You start viewing yourself as, the kind of cooperative citizen who actively advocates for road safety.
You've adopted the identity.
Right. If you refuse the big sign 2 weeks later, you are suddenly contradicting this newly established identity. You create cognitive dissonance. You feel like a hypocrite.
The manipulator alters your self-perception through a microscopic action and then uses your own desire for internal consistency to force compliance on a massive action.
It's so subtle.
And when we bring this into the digital age, this mechanism translates to what tech companies call low-friction engagements.
Like scrolling and tapping.
Think about the architecture of a social media platform. A foreign interference campaign isn't going to ask a French citizen to take to the streets and riot immediately. The request is too big.
Right.
Instead, they present you with a mildly amusing meme that has a very subtle, perhaps slightly cynical political undertone. The platform makes it incredibly easy, low friction to just click like. It takes a fraction of a second.
The modern version of the tiny window sticker.
Yes. A few days later, the algorithm feeds you a slightly more pointed article and you leave a short comment. Then you sign a digital petition. Then you share a controversial video.
With each tiny click, you are laying down a brick in a new digital identity.
You are building a behavioral track record. When the manipulator eventually pushes a radical narrative or issues a call for disruptive action, perhaps protesting a European mandate or boycotting a democratic institution, refusing to participate would violate the identity you have slowly, algorithmically built for yourself over thousands of micro-interactions. The tension of stepping back is greater than the tension of moving forward.
But, the psychological laboratory of the 1960s is one thing. Having a guy in a white coat knock on your door is a very manual, slow process.
Very slow.
What happens when you scale that mental autocorrect, that foot-in-the-door identity shifting, to billions of people? What happens when these psychological levers are pulled automatically, simultaneously, by serval farms and artificial intelligence?
That's where we transition from the manual application of psychology to the industrial automation of the ish. And we do not have to guess what this looks like.
Yeah.
We have undeniable proof that this architecture has been tested on the global public.
The Facebook study.
Yes. To understand the baseline of modern digital manipulation, we must examine the highly controversial Facebook emotional contagion experiment of 2012.
This is one of the most staggering documents in the entire dossier. We are talking about a massive, unannounced psychological experiment conducted on nearly 700,000 human beings who had no idea they were guinea pigs.
In January 2012, data scientists employed by Facebook, in collaboration with academic researchers from Cornell University, manipulated the news feeds of 689,003 users.
Almost 1 million people.
They ran this experiment for an entire week, and they did it without explicitly informing the users, without offering an opt-out, and without asking for informed consent.
Just tweak the code.
The methodology was straightforward in its engineering, but profound in its implications. They algorithmically altered the emotional valence of the content these users were allowed to see.
Let's break down the mechanics of that. When you say emotional valence, how does a computer program even know what an emotion is? How did they decide what was a happy post and what was a sad post?
They utilized a text analysis software program called Linguistic Inquiry and Word Count, or LIWC. This software scans text and categorizes words based on emotional dictionaries.
Okay.
Words like love, nice, or sweet are mathematically tagged as positive valence. Words like hurt, ugly, or nasty are tagged as negative.
Simple enough.
Facebook took their massive pool of nearly 700,000 users and split them into distinct experimental groups. For one massive group, Facebook tweaked the algorithm to deliberately suppress positive posts from their friends and family.
Suppress them entirely.
Hid them from the feed.
Uh.
If your sister posted about getting a promotion, the algorithm hid it from you. This ensured that your news feed was artificially heavy with negative, sad, or angry content.
Oh my God.
For another group, they executed the exact inverse. They suppressed the negative content and flooded the user's feeds with artificially concentrated positivity.
And what were they looking for? Were they just trying to see if people would complain?
They were testing the theory of emotional contagion. This is the idea that emotions can transfer from person to person without conscious awareness.
Like catching a cold.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They monitored the results by analyzing over 3 million posts and 122 million words generated by those 700,000 users during that week.
And what did they find?
The result proved that emotional contagion is not only real, but it operates highly effectively without any face-to-face interaction, purely through digital text.
Wow.
The users, who were secretly fed a diet of negative content, began generating and posting significantly more negative words and fewer positive words in their own original status updates.
And the positive group,
The users subjected to the artificially positive feeds did the exact opposite. They became more positive.
so they literally infected people with a mood. They reached through the screen from a server in California, tweaked a line of code, and made hundreds of thousands of people feel sadder or angrier or happier.
That's exactly what happened.
And the people sitting at their computers or looking at their phones just thought they were having a bad day. They thought the emotions they were feeling in their own bodies were their own organic responses to the world.
The study was eventually published in the prestigious journal PNAS in 2014,
Yeah.
and it caused an immediate ethical uproar across the academic and tech communities.
Bet.
Facebook defended the experiment by arguing that it was consistent with their data use policy and that they were simply testing algorithms to improve the user experience.
User experience.
But the chilling implication was now out in the open, confirmed by peer-reviewed science. The researchers themselves wrote in their conclusion that the results show that personalization algorithms can manipulate the collective psyche and induce specific emotions completely undetected.
Unbelievable.
If a private corporation can do this simply to see if it alters user engagement metrics, a hostile state actor can utilize the exact same algorithmic mechanisms to induce apathy before a critical European election, or to engineer rage before a protest in Paris.
It bypasses logic entirely. You don't have to debate someone on the merits of an economic policy if you can just algorithmically depress them so much they don't even bother to leave their house to vote.
You don't even have to make an argument.
But to do this effectively, to know which emotional buttons to push for which person, you need to know exactly who you are manipulating. A one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work, right? You need a psychological profile of your target.
This is where the architecture of surveillance merges with the psychology of manipulation. We encounter the concept of psychographic profiling.
Okay, what's that?
For decades, traditional psychologists have used something called the OCEAN model to categorize human personality. OCEAN is an acronym for 5 core traits: openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism.
So historically, to map someone's ocean profile, you'd need a lot of time.
It was a laborious process. A subject would have to sit in a clinician's office and take a long, standardized 100-question survey.
Like, do you enjoy loud parties, or do you worry about things out of your control, that kind of thing?
Precisely. But a fundamental shift occurred when a researcher at Cambridge University named Michal Kaczynski developed a new computational model.
What did he do?
Kaczynski and his team proved that they did not need you to take a psychological test. They could accurately predict your highly sensitive, latent personal traits using nothing but your passive digital footprints. Specifically, the things you clicked like across Facebook.
See, this is the part that sounds like magic. How does liking a picture of a cat or a brand of shoes tell a computer about my internal psychology? How does the math actually work?
It works through the sheer scale of correlative data and matrix multiplication. The algorithm isn't looking for obvious causal links.
Like, liking sports doesn't mean you're aggressive.
Right. Liking a specific brand of cosmetics doesn't cause you to be extroverted. But when you have a data set of millions of users, the algorithm maps out a vast multidimensional vector space. It looks for statistical co-occurrences. Kaczynski's algorithm found that liking certain completely innocuous pages, perhaps a specific musician like the Wu-Tang Clan, or a brand like Hello Kitty, or even curly fries, correlated with startling mathematical precision to hidden traits.
Curly fries. Really?
Yes. By analyzing a fraction of a user's likes, the algorithm could deduce their intelligence level, their sexual orientation, their political leanings, their religious views, and even deeply personal historical facts,
Like what?
such as whether the user's parents had separated before they turned 21.
From Facebook likes, it is literal digital mind reading. They don't need to ask you who you are. Your ambient behavior betrays your psychology.
Your data speaks for you.
And once these data brokers have that map of your mind, once they know you score highly in neuroticism or low in conscientiousness, they can start applying what behavioral economists call nudging.
Nudging is a concept pioneered by researchers Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein. In behavioral economics, a nudge is defined as any aspect of the choice architecture that predictably alters human behavior without forbidding any options or significantly changing economic incentives.
So it's not a ban or a tax.
Yeah. A nudge taps into our automatic, heuristic decision-making processes, the fast, lazy part of the brain, rather than our systematic, rational deliberation.
We see this all the time. A classic example the dossier mentions is the Facebook "I voted" button.
Yes, very famous example.
On Election Day, Facebook places a button at the top of the newsfeed reminding people to vote. By itself, it provided a slight, measurable bump in voter turnout. But then Facebook started experimenting with the choice architecture.
They tweak the environment.
Right. They found that if they added a social message, specifically showing the user the profile pictures of up to 6 of their close friends who had already clicked the "I voted" button, the effectiveness of the nudge skyrocketed. It weaponized peer pressure to drive civic action.
It did.
But here's where I'm genuinely struggling to see the evil in this specific example. If a button gets more people to participate in democracy, why are we calling it dark psychological manipulation?
It's a fair question.
Isn't a nudge just like a helpful GPS? It knows where I want to go to be a good citizen, and it's just helping me get there faster. At what point does marketing or nudging cross the line into a dark, coercive psyop?
That is the essential ethical and mechanical boundary we must define. The difference lies in how we understand coercion in a digital context.
Okay.
Coercion here is not about holding a physical weapon to someone's head. It is about deliberately precluding reflection. It is about taking away the target's opportunity for rational deliberation.
So the GPS analogy doesn't hold up.
A GPS asks for your desired destination and offers a route which you can evaluate. A dark nudge operates covertly. It taps into unconscious emotional triggers like the fear of social exclusion if your friends voted and you didn't, or it exploits psychological failings to bypass your critical thinking entirely.
It makes the choice for you before you even realize you're making a choice.
Exactly. It is an inherently elitist, paternalistic technique. The architect of the choice environment assumes they know what the positive public good is, and they trick the citizen into compliance without their conscious participation.
The Bernays mindset again.
Yes. When people are targeted covertly, when they do not know the environment has been engineered to produce a specific choice, the freedom of choice is merely an illusion.
You feel like you're making a free choice from a menu, but you don't realize the manipulator wrote the menu, priced the items, and lit the restaurant specifically to make you order the steak.
That's a perfect analogy.
And to see how this covert digital coercion is applied to real-world democratic processes, we have to shift our focus to the European laboratory. We need to look at the United Kingdom's Brexit referendum in 2016 and the arrival of a company called Cambridge Analytica.
Cambridge Analytica is the textbook case study of weaponized psychographics, moving from theory into historical impact. To understand how they operated, you have to look at their parent company, the SCL Group.
Who were they?
SCL was not a traditional advertising agency. They had a defense arm that operated as a military contractor for NATO and allied governments.
Wait, they were military contractors?
Yes. During their military work, they developed a methodology called target audience analysis.
So this wasn't designed to sell cars?
No, absolutely not. Target audience analysis was a military psychological operation, or PSYOP, methodology.
Wow.
Traditional marketing looks at demographics, age, gender, postal code. Target audience analysis looks at psychographics. It was designed to map the deep cultural, tribal, and psychological attributes of an enemy population in a theater of war in order to induce specific behaviors.
Like what kind of behaviors?
Like encouraging insurgent surrender or turning local populations against hostile leadership.
They took a literal weapon of war,
Yeah.
a tool designed to break the will of foreign adversaries, and they pointed it directly at the domestic civilian electorate.
Exactly the same architecture. Cambridge Analytica deployed this military-grade target audience analysis for political campaigns, most notably working with the Leave.eu campaign during the Brexit referendum.
So how do they apply it to British voters?
They did not rely on traditional political persuasion. They didn't just blanket the country with billboards trying to argue logically that leaving the European Union was a sound macroeconomic strategy.
They bypassed the rational debate.
Entirely. They ingested massive amounts of data, including the Facebook data derived from Kaczynski-style models, to map the ocean profiles of millions of British voters. Then they delivered hyper-optimized, highly emotive, and often entirely deceptive messages tailored to the specific psychological vulnerabilities of individual citizens.
What does that actually look like in practice? How do you tailor a political message to a psychological trait?
Let's use the ocean model. If the algorithm identified a voter who profiled extremely high in neuroticism, meaning they were highly prone to anxiety, fear, and threat sensitivity, Cambridge Analytica would not show them a graph about trade regulations.
What would they show them?
They would target that specific voter's feed with dark posts. These are untraceable, hyper-targeted ads, and they would highlight terrifying, often fabricated threats of Turkish immigration and imminent border collapse.
So they hit them right in the fear center.
The goal was to trigger their amygdala. Conversely, if a voter profiled high in conscientiousness, someone who values order, rules, and efficiency, they would be targeted with a completely different ad.
What would that one be?
Ads detailing the infuriating, chaotic, bureaucratic overreach of the European Union in Brussels.
So they weren't trying to inform the debate or build a national consensus. They were fracturing the reality of the electorate, pulling individual psychological levers to bypass the debate entirely.
They created a million different realities for a million different voters.
But reading through the European Parliament briefings on this, there is an even darker side to this targeting. It wasn't always about getting people to vote for Brexit, was it?
It was not. One of the most sinister, anti-democratic elements of Cambridge Analytica's methodology, a tactic they openly pitched to various political campaigns globally, is the automation of voter suppression.
Suppressing the vote.
Yes. In a polarized electorate, targeting isn't always about convincing someone to agree with you. That is expensive and difficult. Sometimes, the most mathematically efficient way to win an election is to identify the people who might vote against you and systematically dampen their volition to act at all.
How do you algorithmically depress a citizen? How do you strip away their desire to participate?
You manipulate their digital filter bubbles to induce overwhelming cynicism. The campaign identifies voters who are perhaps on the fence or lightly supportive of the opposition, say, moderate Remain voters in this context.
Okay.
Instead of trying to convince them to vote Leave, the algorithm floods their feeds with harsh, discouraging, confusing messaging. You feed them articles, real or fake, highlighting hypocrisy within the Remain camp.
You make them hate their own side.
Or you just show them endless debates demonstrating that the system is broken, that politicians are all corrupt, that their individual vote won't change the outcome, or that both sides are equally terrible options.
You just wear them down.
You exhaust them. You limit their behavioral choices by altering their environment to make the act of participating in the democratic process feel utterly pointless. It is a targeted, coercive dampening of civic duty.
And this strikes right at the heart of the European ideal of free, fair, and informed elections. If a private, profit-driven company can deploy military psyops to manipulate a national referendum, it opens a terrifying door.
It does.
Because what happens when the intelligence agencies of hostile nation-states look at Cambridge Analytica's playbook and say, we don't need a contract, we can do that ourselves, but on a massive industrialized scale to destabilize entire rival nations?
That brings us from the private sector's behavioral nudging into the realm of overt state-level interference. And the defining strategic model of this era, heavily documented in the NATO materials, is a concept articulated by the RAND Corporation known as the fire hose of falsehood.
The fire hose of falsehood. It is a brilliant, highly evocative term. It's most frequently associated with the propaganda models developed under Vladimir Putin in Russia. But the dossier makes it exceedingly clear this isn't just a Russian tactic anymore.
Not at all.
The architecture has been open-sourced. China uses it. Domestic political operatives across Europe use it. Fringe anti-vaccine movements use it. It has become a universal weapon of cognitive disruption.
It has proliferated because it aggressively exploits a universal biological flaw in human cognition. The fire hose of falsehood model relies on 4 distinct, interconnected pillars.
Let's walk through those. What's the first pillar?
The first pillar is that the propaganda must be high volume and multi-channel. A modern manipulator doesn't just broadcast a lie on a single state-run television network.
No, that's old school.
They blast it across state media, disguised proxy websites, networks of millions of automated social media bots, fake local news accounts, and paid human influencers on platforms like TikTok and YouTube.
So the message surrounds you. Everywhere you look, you see a piece of it.
Which leads to the second pillar. It must be rapid, continuous, and repetitive. They flood the information zone constantly, reacting to events faster than traditional journalists can even verify the basic facts. And the repetition is mechanically crucial.
Because of the illusory truth effect.
Yes.
This is a terrifying glitch in the human brain. The psychology shows that even if we know something is false when we first hear it, if we hear it repeated enough times, our brain starts to process the information as familiar. And the brain fundamentally confuses familiarity with truth.
The human brain is a highly efficient, lazy organ. It relies on cognitive shortcuts or heuristics to save energy. When assessing if a claim is true, the brain checks how easily the information is retrieved from memory.
And if you've heard it 100 times.
Because repetitive propaganda is highly familiar, it is easily retrieved. The brain interprets that ease of processing as credibility. Familiarity bypasses rational analysis.
Wow.
The third pillar of the fire hose is that it operates with absolutely no commitment to objective reality. The propagandists are not trying to spin or interpret true events to their advantage. They are fabricating events entirely out of whole cloth.
Just making things up.
And the fourth, and perhaps most strategically baffling pillar, is that they operate with absolutely no commitment to consistency. The exact same state actor will literally broadcast violently conflicting stories on the same day, on the same channel.
See, this is the part that bends the mind. If you are a propagandist and you are trying to convince the world of a lie, shouldn't you try to keep your story straight?
You would think so.
If you contradict yourself, people will know you are lying. It's like a shotgun blast of nonsense. Why would you want your own propaganda to conflict?
Because you have misidentified their goal. The goal of the fire hose of falsehood is not persuasion. The goal is exhaustion. When hostile adversaries employ this fire hose, they are not trying to convince you of a specific alternate reality. They are trying to destroy the concept of reality itself. When a citizen is bombarded with hundreds of conflicting, emotionally charged, fabricated stories a day, they experience profound cognitive overload.
Their brain just gives up.
The public begins to believe that the truth is fundamentally unknowable.
And if the truth is unknowable, you just stop trying to find it.
Precisely. And here is the existential danger to any sovereign European nation. If the citizenry believes the truth is unknowable, reasoned democratic debate dies instantly.
Because you can't debate without facts.
Democratic debate requires a shared foundational baseline of facts. When reasoned discourse is rendered impossible by exhaustion and cynicism, all that is left is the raw exercise of power. It paves the way for authoritarianism, because an exhausted populace just wants someone strong to step in and impose order on the informational chaos.
It is a deliberate, systematic dismantling of reality. The dossier emphasizes a vital distinction here made by cognitive researchers. They argue quite strongly that we shouldn't necessarily call this cognitive warfare. They prefer the term cognitive aggression.
It is an incredibly important semantic and operational distinction. The term warfare implies a recognized state of conflict. It implies that both sides know they are in a fight and that the target population is aware they are being fired upon.
But that's not what's happening here.
No. The architecture we're discussing operates almost entirely below the threshold of conscious recognition. The target population in France or Germany or the UK rarely realizes they are under attack.
They just think they are doom-scrolling.
Their perceptions, their emotional baselines, and their civic decisions are being shaped without their explicit knowledge or consent. Therefore, aggression or interference is a much more accurate term than warfare for these insidious creeping operations.
Hint, part of this cognitive aggression includes a tactic the researchers called geopolitical trolling and the deployment of the grotesque.
This is a relatively new, highly disruptive evolution in statecraft. We are seeing major state actors, through their diplomatic accounts or proxy networks, deliberately flood the information zone with absolute, verifiable absurdities.
Like what?
They will create crude AI-generated caricatures or push conspiracy theories that are so outlandish they don't even pretend to be credible. It is deliberate, weaponized trolling on a geopolitical scale.
But why? What's the point of being absurd?
The purpose of the grotesque is to artificially lower the public's cognitive defenses. By normalizing the constant presence of blatant falsehood in the public square, it creates an environment where citizens abandon independent verification. The effort required to fact-check the grotesque is too high, so the citizen falls back into a state of epistemic dependency.
Epistemic dependency. What exactly does that look like for a normal person trying to navigate their day?
It means you outsource your understanding of reality. Because verifying facts has become too mentally taxing in a polluted information environment, you simply retreat into your tribal emotional information flows.
You just listen to your bubble.
You stop trying to figure out what is objectively true, and you just blindly trust whatever your specific political in-group or your favored algorithmic influencer tells you is true. You become entirely dependent on the tribe for your epistemology, your knowledge of the world.
So how are European governments currently experiencing and fighting this modern manipulation? I mean, this isn't just theory drawn from white papers. This is happening right now on European soil at an industrial scale. Let's look at the actual battleground by opening the recent intelligence reports from France and the wider EU.
The French government has recognized this as a primary national security threat, which led directly to the establishment of Viginum.
And Viginum is essentially their cyber defense for public opinion.
Viginum operates directly under the General Secretariat for Defense and National Security. Their explicit singular mandate is to detect, characterize, and expose foreign digital interference operations that target the French public debate. And their recently declassified reports detail some highly sophisticated AI-driven campaigns.
They caught a massive operation recently, right, around the Paris Olympic and Paralympic Games?
Indeed, Viginum identified and exposed a massive coordinated campaign broadly categorized as spamouflage.
Spammer.
During the lead-up to and execution of the Olympic Games, foreign state-aligned actors utilized generative artificial intelligence to mass-produce enormous volumes of text content, aiming to manipulate the global narrative around the security and success of the Games in Paris.
So they were trying to make it look like a disaster.
Exactly. They unleashed vast ecosystems of inauthentic accounts, automated bots across platforms like X, Tumblr, and various blogging sites. The AI was directed to manufacture a synthetic public outcry, creating the digital illusion of massive controversy, boycotts, or imminent danger where no organic threat actually existed.
It's like pouring thousands of fake holographic protesters into a digital town square screaming about a riot to make the actual citizens believe their city is burning.
It's exactly like that.
But Viginum also tracks something called the RRN ecosystem, which seems even more insidious because it doesn't just exist on social media. It targets the fundamental infrastructure of how we search for information on the internet.
The RRN ecosystem is a fascinating and deeply concerning evolution in propaganda delivery. It is a vast network of newly created fake news websites specifically designed to target French-speaking audiences.
So they build fake newspapers, basically.
Yes, but the operators are not employing hundreds of human writers to manually craft fake articles. They use generative AI connected to automated publishing tools to churn out an unimaginable volume of articles in perfect, localized French.
Fast, cheap, and grammatically flawless.
Once the sites are populated, they utilize the programmatic advertising articles, buying targeted online ads to push these fake, highly polarizing articles directly onto the social media feeds of specific French demographic profiles.
They are using the exact same targeted ad technology a local bakery would use to sell croissants, but they're using it to inject AI-generated geopolitical propaganda directly into the veins of the French electorate.
And it goes further than social media feeds. Because generative AI can generate and translate text so rapidly and without human error, the RRN ecosystem uses it to flood the open internet with specific political keywords. What does that do? They generate thousands of slight permutations of an article to drastically improve their search engine optimization, or SEO.
SEO.
The mechanical result is that if an everyday French citizen simply goes to Google to search for information on a legitimate, nuanced political topic, perhaps a new agricultural policy or a European defense initiative, the sheer volume of AI-generated garbage ensures that these fake RRN sites appear at the very top of the search results.
They are literally hacking the search engine algorithms to overwrite the public's access to reality.
They are manipulating the index of the internet itself.
And the generative technology they are using is only getting more realistic and harder to detect. If we look beyond France, we see the findings from the European External Action Service, the EAS, regarding the recent elections in Moldova.
Moldova is a very critical case study.
It really is. Moldova is sitting right on the geopolitical fault line of European integration, and the cognitive interference deployed there was unprecedented.
The events in Moldova serve as a stark, immediate warning for the rest of Europe's democratic infrastructure. During their recent presidential election and the highly contested EU accession referendum, the EEAS documented the weaponized deployment of deepfakes for the purpose of identity hijacking.
Identity hijacking.
The most prominent and damaging example was an incredibly high-quality AI-generated video deepfake of the incumbent Moldovan president, Maia Sandu.
This wasn't some crude Photoshop.
No, it was nearly indistinguishable from reality. The video featured a flawless AI-cloned voiceover imitation of the president's exact cadence and tone.
That is terrifying.
This synthetic video was then distributed massively across encrypted networks like Telegram and algorithmic platforms like TikTok, specifically targeting rural and undecided voters.
And what was she saying in the video? Or what was the AI saying?
The deepfake showed the president allegedly making disparaging statements about her own citizens and announcing policies designed to completely undermine her own campaign. It deliberately sowed massive confusion among her base mere days before the vote.
Think about the psychology of the user here. If you are scrolling fast through TikTok on your lunch break and you see a video of the president and it looks like the president and it sounds exactly like the president, your brain automatically accepts it as reality.
The cognitive shortcut triggers immediately.
It triggers before your critical thinking can step in and look for digital artifacts. But the EES report notes they went beyond just deepfakes. They actually gamified the manipulation. They introduced direct financial incentives.
That specific mechanism is what makes the Moldovan case a terrifying new frontier. The EAS noted that for the first time in a democratic European election, foreign actors deployed an interactive chatbot on messaging apps that offered direct monetary rewards to citizens.
Direct payments.
The chatbot would organically engage with users, feed them specific disinformation narratives regarding the EU referendum, and then explicitly offer them cryptocurrency or digital payments to distribute that content further to their contacts or to alter their voting behavior.
Unbelievable.
It is the absolute weaponization of social media network effects, combined with direct, automated financial bribery managed entirely by an AI program.
It is breathtaking in its audacity. You are just texting a bot, and the bot is bribing you to destroy your own democracy. It shows that manipulation isn't always subtle or purely psychological. Sometimes it's deep fake, hacking your visual cortex, and sometimes it's just a digital bribe.
A literal transaction.
But all of these actions, the deep fakes, the bot networks, the SEO manipulation, fall under a much broader doctrine of statecraft. The dossier brings in the NATO Strategic Communications Toolkit, which outlines a foundational doctrine called Everything Communicates.
The Everything Communicates doctrine is vital for understanding how modern state-level signaling operates in this cognitive environment. NATO Stratcom emphasizes a holistic view of information.
Everything is a message.
They teach that actions, words, images, and even the deliberate absence of action all send a calculated psychological message. The communication is not just what a government explicitly says in a press release or a televised speech. The communication is what the government physically does.
The action itself.
And these physical actions are entirely designed to resolve themselves in the cognitive dimension of the target audience, whether that audience is a hostile adversary, an allied nation, or their own domestic population.
I really want to ground this in reality. Can we look at some of the specific examples from the NATO toolkit? Because this is where the lines between hard physical reality and soft psychological messaging completely blur together.
Certainly. Consider a seemingly mundane domestic policy announcement. When the UK government publicly announces they are investing £36 million in new cybersecurity infrastructure projects, the primary goal of that public announcement is not simply the administrative act of buying software or hiring technicians.
What's the real goal?
The announcement itself is a strategic communication. The message is dual-purposed. It is designed to psychologically reassure the domestic UK population that their sovereign data is protected, while simultaneously broadcasting a deterrent signal to foreign adversaries that the UK's digital borders are hardened.
It is a psychological operation enacted through public budget allocation.
So the money is real, but the way they spend it is a message.
Exactly. Similarly, when a sovereign nation loudly deploys a squadron of fighter jets to patrol a border, they are not usually expecting to engage in a dogfight. The jets are physical objects functioning as psychological messaging.
They're deterrents.
Or look at economic integration. When Baltic countries like Latvia, Estonia, and Finland launch a joint interconnected gas market, the NATO doctrine views this as a profound act of strategic communication.
It's not just about heating homes. The joint gas market isn't just about energy efficiency. It is a massive structural broadcast of energy independence intended to psychologically deter Russian economic coercion. The pipeline is the message.
Every geopolitical move, every budget, every pipeline is a stage play designed to provoke a specific psychological reaction in the audience.
It's all theater.
And we see this mastery of discourse shaping not just in foreign interference or international deterrence, but by national leaders aggressively controlling their own domestic narratives. The dossier includes a fascinating, highly detailed text analysis of the speeches and campaigns of Hungary's Prime Minister, Viktor Orban.
The linguistic analysis of Hungary over the last decade provides a masterclass in the mechanics of domestic discourse shaping. Again, we look at this strictly to understand the mechanics of how language alters perception.
Impartially, yes. What did the text analysis reveal?
In 2015, during the massive influx of migrants from the Middle East and Africa into Europe, Orban's government aggressively and systematically utilized what political researchers call the moral panic button.
The moral panic button.
Through heavily politicized, state-sponsored information campaigns, massive billboard rollouts, national consultations, and formal referendums, the government deliberately engineered a hostile, high-fear narrative.
They ramped up the fear.
They framed the complex migration issue not as an administrative challenge, but as a dire existential threat to Hungarian cultural sovereignty and physical safety. In doing so, they explicitly positioned the European Union in Brussels as an adversarial, interfering force trying to force this threat upon them.
So they manufactured a state of constant crisis. They used the mechanics of fear to unify their domestic base against a perceived external enemy, in this case, the central authority in Brussels and the migrants crossing the border. It's a very potent in-group versus out-group dynamic on a national scale.
It's highly effective for political cohesion.
But the text analysis in the dossier shows how incredibly agile this psychological manipulation can be when the geopolitical circumstances suddenly change, doesn't it?
The agility is the most revealing aspect of the analysis. When the Russian invasion of Ukraine began in 2022, a massive wave of Ukrainian refugees arrived directly at Hungary's borders.
A completely new crisis.
Suddenly, the rigid anti-migrant narrative established in 2015 was geopolitically inconvenient and diplomatically untenable. The text analysis shows how swiftly, efficiently, and deliberately the Prime Minister altered his public discourse.
What did he do?
He immediately introduced a rigid, highly specific linguistic differentiation between real refugees, meaning the fleeing Ukrainians, and the dangerous migrants of 2015.
It just changed the vocabulary to change the reality.
The state-aligned media outlets instantly adapted to the new directive. The linguistic analysis tracks a sudden, massive change in the frequency of specific terms. They introduced the word Ukraine into heavy rotation to facilitate public understanding of the war-related events in a positive, charitable light, while simultaneously maintaining the negative valence around the word migrant for populations from the south.
That is surgically precise.
The cognitive architecture of the Hungarian public was seamlessly reprogrammed to support a completely contradictory policy without triggering mass cognitive dissonance.
And to be clear to the listener, the dossier emphasizes that this analysis is an impartial observation of the raw mechanics at play. It demonstrates with undeniable data how effectively a centralized government can pivot its language to entirely control public perception and justify totally opposing policies within a few short years.
It's about protecting national interests by actively programming the national consciousness.
Right. But to program us to target the neurotic voter with the fear ad or the French citizen with the fake AI news site, the architects of manipulation need to feed the beast with data. Let's trace this back to the surveillance backbone. Let's talk about how they know who you are. Let's talk about PRISM and XKeyscore.
To understand the precision of modern targeting, we must understand the breathtaking scale of data collection. Following the Edward Snowden intelligence leaks over a decade ago, the global public became aware of NSA surveillance programs like PRISM and XKeyscore.
We all remember those headlines.
PRISM involved intelligence agencies gathering vast, unimaginable amounts of communication data directly from the servers of major tech companies. XKeyscore was effectively a private search engine for global internet traffic.
Just scooping everything up.
But the reality of how this data is utilized is often deeply misunderstood by the public. The intelligence agencies are not sitting in a dark room with headphones, listening to your phone calls or reading your emails to your grandmother.
Right, because there's just too much data. It's not physically, humanly possible to read it all.
It is what the intelligence community refers to as the big data problem. The vast, overwhelming majority of citizens are entirely uninteresting to national security apparatuses. So they do not rely on human review, they rely entirely on algorithmic filtering.
The algorithm does the watching.
The immense data collection acts as a massive passive net. They run highly complex machine learning algorithms against the metadata, not the content of your message, but the data about your data. Who you called, how long the call lasted, what time of day it was, what geographical locations your phone pinged, what websites you visited.
Let me stop you there because this is the question everyone has. If I'm just living a normal life, paying my taxes, going to work, looking at recipes online, am I completely anonymous? Or is my entire digital existence just sitting there in a server farm, waiting for an algorithm to decide that I'm suddenly interesting?
Functionally, it is the latter. You are effectively anonymous in the crowd until the algorithm flags you.
And what triggers the flag?
A dramatic, statistically significant shift in your behavioral metadata. Imagine you have been browsing sports websites, checking the weather, and looking at cooking blogs for 10 years. Your data profile is utterly benign,
Okay, I'm boring.
but suddenly, over a 3-month period, your web history shifts entirely. You start spending hours on radical political forum, you download encrypted messaging applications you've never used before, and you start looking at international flight bookings to conflict zones.
The pattern breaks.
The algorithm detects that behavioral anomaly. It flags your profile. Then, and only then, does the human intelligence analyst focus their attention down on you.
It is exactly the same underlying mechanic as commercial AI. If I am scrolling online and I start browsing for baby cribs, the commercial algorithm immediately detects the behavioral shift and starts aggressively feeding me diaper ads.
The exact same logic.
The intelligence algorithms just trigger on perceived security threats instead of consumer habits. Your behavior is the trigger. So if we accept this reality if our data is out there and these psychological tools are so incredibly powerful and automated, how can the average citizen, the sovereign individual who just wants to think for themselves, identify this manipulation in their daily life?
Defense in this environment requires active vigilance. The dossier provides a highly practical, evidence-based checklist to identify when you are being targeted.
Walk us through it.
The first thing to look for are dark patterns in your digital environment, particularly in e-commerce, travel booking, or political fundraising. Are you seeing aggressive, fake scarcity counters?
The flashing red text.
Those flashing messages screaming, "Only 2 items left," or "This donation match expires in 10 minutes." This is the engineered fear of missing out. It is a choice architecture designed specifically to bypass your rational thought processes and force an impulsive automatic action.
If the screen is telling you that you don't have time to think, it's usually because they know that if you think, you won't do it.
Correct. The urgency is the manipulation. The second major red flag is the emotional trigger. When you're reading an article or watching a video, pause and ask yourself, does this content make me feel intense, blinding anger?
Or profound, paralyzing fear.
Or deep, disorienting confusion? We have to remember the neuroscience of the human brain. Intense fear and anger trigger the amygdala, which literally disables the prefrontal cortex, the logical, critical thinking center of your brain.
You literally can't think straight.
If a piece of media makes you furious, it is highly probable it was designed specifically to make you furious, so you would share it without taking the time to verify if it was even true.
And what about the feeling of consensus? That seems to be a major factor in the European context right now, especially with the bot networks on social media.
Forced consensus is a classic, highly effective psychological operation tactic. When you are engaging with an issue online, ask yourself, are you being made to feel that if you don't agree with this particular narrative, you are entirely alone, stupid, or completely out of step with civilized society?
It feels like everyone is against you.
Manipulators use bot networks and algorithmic amplification to create the artificial illusion that everyone thinks a certain way. This leverages your deep evolutionary desire to conform to the tribe to avoid social exclusion. If you feel pressured to agree just to fit in, you are being manipulated.
So we train ourselves to spot the dark patterns, we recognize the anger triggers hijacking our amygdala, and we identify the forced consensus of the botnets. What are our actual countermeasures? If we are facing a highly sophisticated, AI-driven fire hose of falsehood, how do we fight back? Do we just find the truth and yell it louder?
Counterintuitively, no. The intelligence experts and psychologists explicitly warn against attempting to use a squirt gun of truth against the fire hose.
Why not?
If you see a fabricated, highly manipulative story trending on your social media feed, do not engage with it. Do not quote tweet it to debunk it. Do not write a long, well-researched post explaining to your followers why it is a lie.
But shouldn't we correct the record?
Because of the illusory truth effect we discussed earlier, simply repeating the false story, even in the context of attacking it, increases its overall visibility. It feeds the algorithm, and it makes the core lie more familiar and therefore more believable to the subconscious mind of anyone scrolling past your debunk it.
You think you are fighting the propaganda, but you are actually just providing them with free algorithmic advertising. You are amplifying their signal.
You become part of their distribution network. The primary, most effective countermeasure is radical, conscious detachment. You must train yourself not to react emotionally to digital stimuli. When confronted with highly triggering, sensationalized information, step back. Force yourself to respond with slow reason rather than fast reaction.
Take a breath.
Question the incentives of the messenger. Ask yourself, who benefits geopolitically or financially from me feeling this angry right now? Who funded this message?
Follow the motive.
And finally, we must all cultivate deep algorithmic literacy. We must accept the fundamental reality that our news feeds, our search results, and our digital interactions are not neutral reflections of the physical world. They are highly curated, heavily monetized, and frequently weaponized environments designed to alter our behavior.
This has been an absolutely staggering journey through the architecture of the mind. We have unpacked the arrogant origins of public relations with Edward Bernays in the 1920s. We've dissected how our deep biological need to resolve cognitive dissonance makes us incredibly vulnerable to the foot-in-the-door technique, forcing us to rewrite our own identities.
It's all connected.
We've seen how the 2012 Facebook study automated that vulnerability to prove emotional contagion on a mass scale, and how Cambridge Analytica weaponized those exact same psychographics to suppress voters and induce apathy during Brexit.
The industrial automation of the itch.
We've navigated the chaotic, exhausting reality of the fire hose of falsehood used by state actors to destroy objective truth. And we've looked at the real-world AI-generated deepfakes and algorithmic search manipulations that intelligence agencies like Viginum are currently battling across France and Europe to protect the basic integrity of the public square.
It is a comprehensive, multi-layered architecture explicitly designed to bypass your autonomy. And as we conclude this investigation, I want to leave you with one final, deeply provocative thought that builds upon the trajectory of everything we have discussed today.
Where is this going next?
The technology is not stopping at text generation or deepfake videos. We are entering an era where generative AI is becoming entirely indistinguishable from human interaction. But much more concerningly, our real-time biometric data is becoming seamlessly integrated into these digital ecosystems.
Biometric data, like smartwatches.
Your smartwatch currently tracks your heart rate, your skin temperature, your sleep patterns, and your physical stress levels.
It knows exactly what physical state my nervous system is in at any given second of the day.
Precisely. Now, project the psychology of manipulation into that near-future reality. Imagine a world where the foreign interference algorithm doesn't just guess your psychological profile based on a Facebook like from 5 years ago.
Okay.
Imagine an algorithm that registers in real time that your heart rate is elevated, your sleep quality was poor, and you are physiologically stressed right now. It then instantly commands an AI to generate a hyper-personalized synthetic article or video designed specifically to exploit that exact moment of biological vulnerability, sliding it into your feed before your heart rate even has a chance to drop.
That is horrifying.
The ultimate danger we face isn't just that you'll be tricked into believing a fake article on a French news site. The profound existential danger is that the emotional responses you feel inside your own body, your anger, your fear, your sudden joy, will have been entirely synthetic all along.
You won't know what's real.
You will be completely unable to distinguish your own organic human feelings from those engineered by a server halfway across the world. You must understand the reality of the modern digital battlefield. You are not just the target of this manipulation. Your mind, and increasingly your very biology, is the infrastructure they are building it on.
Your mind is the infrastructure. That is the chilling thought we leave you with today. Protect your sovereignty, question your physical reactions to the screen, and never stop looking for the invisible hand on the wheel. Until our next deep dive.